In 2023, a sealed box in a Romanian archive was opened under laboratory conditions. Inside were 3 letters written by Vlad the Impaler, the real Dracula. They were 500 years old, written in Latin, signed in his hand. Scientists weren't interested in the words. They already knew what the letters said. They wanted what was between the words, the invisible residue left by the man who held the paper. His sweat, his skin cells, the proteins shed by his body 5 centuries ago. What they found was not a monster, but it wasn't what they expected either. This is the first time science has touched the body of Dracula, and the results challenge everything, not just about him, but about the people he ruled, the lands he fought for, and the DNA that still flows through that region today. Before we open those letters, you need to understand who he actually was, because the man and the myth have almost nothing in common. Forget the cape, forget the fangs, forget Bram Stoker. Vlad III was born in 1431 in Sighișoara, Transylvania. His father belonged to the Order of the Dragon, a military brotherhood sworn to defend Christendom against the Ottoman Empire. In Romanian, Dracul means the dragon, and Dracula means the son of the dragon. He was not raised in luxury. At 13, Vlad and his younger brother Radu were taken to the Ottoman court as political hostages. They remained there for years. Radu adapted. He converted. He thrived. Vlad did not. When he returned to Wallachia, he was a changed man. His family had been shattered. His father was gone. His older brother had disappeared. The boy who left as a hostage returned hardened by loss. He claimed the throne of Wallachia 3 times between 1448 and 1476. Each time, he faced constant threats. The Ottomans pressed from the south, the Hungarians maneuvered from the north, Saxon merchants in Transylvania supported his rivals, and Vlad responded with a brutality that made his name immortal. In 1462, Vlad impaled thousands of Ottoman prisoners outside the walls of Târgoviște. The Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed II, the man who conquered Constantinople, reportedly turned his army around at the site. That much is likely true. But here's what most people don't know. Almost everything else written about Vlad was propaganda. The Saxon merchants of Brașov and Sibiu printed pamphlets describing his atrocities in extraordinary detail. Vlad dining among the impaled, Vlad nailing turbans to ambassadors' heads. These pamphlets were among the first bestsellers of the printing press. They spread across Europe. But these same merchants were Vlad's political enemies. He had disrupted their trade monopolies. He had executed Saxon settlers who defied his authority. They had every reason to destroy his reputation. Ottoman chronicles called him Kaziklu Voivoda, the Impaler Lord. But the Ottomans had just lost thousands of men to his guerrilla campaigns. They had reasons to paint him as uniquely savage. Romanian oral tradition remembered him differently, a harsh but just ruler who punished the corrupt and defended the poor. 3 sources, 3 different men. So which one was real? For 500 years, that question had no answer. Historians could argue endlessly. Every document was written by someone with an agenda. Then, scientists found a way to ask the man himself. 3 letters survived in Romanian archives, written by Vlad to officials and allies, dated to the 1470s, the final years of his life. One was addressed to the citizens of Brașov, the same city whose merchants had printed pamphlets calling him a monster. In the letter, Vlad requested trade agreements and safe passage for merchants. His handwriting was measured, deliberate, the strokes of a man accustomed to authority. These were not the ravings of a madman. They were the correspondence of a ruler managing diplomacy in a world that wanted him dead. The letters sat in archives for centuries. Historians read the words. But in 2024, a research team from the University of Catania and the University of Genoa asked a different question. What if the letters contained more than words? Every time a human touches a surface, they leave traces. Proteins from sweat glands, cellular debris from skin cells, molecular signatures that can survive for centuries under the right conditions. The team used a technique called mass spectrometry to extract and identify protein fragments from the surface of the paper. They weren't looking for DNA. They were looking for something older techniques couldn't find, the molecular fingerprint of the body that held these pages. And on the 3rd letter, they found it. Human peptides, confirmed. proteins consistent with a single individual who had handled the documents extensively. But the proteins told a story no chronicle ever recorded. The molecular signatures included markers associated with chronic inflammation, specifically proteins linked to inflammatory processes in the respiratory system. The pattern was consistent with a condition called ciliary dyskinesia, or potentially the long-term effects of prolonged imprisonment in poor conditions. And that detail changes the picture. Between 1462 and 1474, Vlad was imprisoned by the Hungarian king Matthias Corvin. 12 years. The conditions of that imprisonment are poorly documented. Some accounts say he was held in relative comfort, others suggest something far worse. The protein suggests the second version may be closer to the truth. The man who terrified the Ottoman Empire may have spent his final years struggling to breathe. The prince who impaled thousands may have been in constant physical pain. The figure history remembers as superhuman was breaking down. No chronicle recorded this, no pamphlet mentioned it, no legend preserved it. His body kept a secret for 500 years, until the molecules spoke. Vlad's full genome has never been sequenced, his remains have never been conclusively identified, but science has found another way to understand where he came from. In 2025, a study published in iScience sequenced whole genomes from 31 individuals buried across Romania, spanning from the 3rd to the 12th century. These were the people who lived in the same lands Vlad would later rule, and their DNA revealed something the history books never made clear. Romania was never one people. The genomes showed layers, a deep Balkan foundation, significant Slavic admixture arriving in waves after the 6th century, and in some individuals, a detectable component of Central Asian steppe ancestry, genetic echoes of the Cumans, the Pechenegs, the nomadic warriors who settled the Wallachian plains centuries before Vlad's birth. A separate 2024 study in the Journal of Human Genetics confirmed the pattern in living Romanians. The modern population carries all of these layers, still detectable, still measurable. Balkan, Slavic, steppe, a genetic crossroads. If Vlad's genome were ever recovered, it would almost certainly show this same mixture. He was not a singular creature. He was the product of every migration, every conquest, every settlement that had passed through those lands for 1,000 years. The monster of legend was made of the same ingredients as everyone else in his kingdom. So, here is what we know. A man born into violence, held hostage as a child, watched his family destroyed, fought his way to a throne he could never hold securely, used terror as a weapon because he had no army large enough to fight conventionally, was imprisoned for 12 years, may have suffered chronic pain that no one recorded, returned to fight one last time, died in battle in 1476, was 45 years old. And then the stories began. The Saxons made him a monster, the Ottomans made him a devil, the Romanians made him a hero, Bram Stoker made him immortal. But the molecules on a 500-year-old letter tell a quieter story. A man whose body was failing, a man who kept writing letters, kept negotiating, kept fighting, even as his lungs betrayed him. The proteins do not care about legends, they do not take sides, they simply record what the body experienced. And what Vlad's body experienced was not the supernatural, it was the relentlessly, painfully human. His blood carried centuries of migration, Balkan, Slavic, steppe, the same layers that flow through Romania today, the same forces that shaped all of Europe. So, does yours. If you want to find out what your own DNA carries, what migrations, what ancient populations, what hidden ancestry is written in your genome, subscribe to Genealogy X. We bring you the science behind the story, every week, because the past is never dead. It's in the letters, it's in the bones, it's in you.